The sun was just rising over the African plains, spreading golden light across the tall grass like spilled honey. The air was soft and cool, filled with the chirping of distant birds and the rustle of leaves swaying lazily in the morning breeze. Under the shade of a huge acacia tree, a pride of lions was waking up slowly, stretching, yawning, and blinking away the sleep. But among them was one cub who never seemed to sleep long, a tiny ball of energy named Tambo. Tambo was unlike any cub the pride had ever known. Mischievous, playful, and full of laughter, he was born with a sparkle in his eyes and a grin that could melt the fiercest heart. His paws were too big, his tail had a funny little curl at the end, and his laugh, oh, his laugh, was the most contagious sound in the savannah. His mother, a beautiful lioness named Lila, adored him deeply, but was constantly exhausted from chasing him around. Whenever she called him with the usual lioness sound, meh, instead of coming quietly like his siblings, Tambo would burst into uncontrollable laughter. Ha ha ha! He would roll on the ground, kicking his legs in the air. The first time it happened, Lila was so startled she nearly jumped. "Tambo, what's so funny?" she said, confused but trying not to laugh herself. But the cub just kept giggling, clutching his belly, eyes squeezed shut. The sound was so pure, so silly, that even the other lionesses couldn't help but join in. Soon, the entire pride was laughing along with him. From that day on, it became a routine. Every morning when Lila called meh, the savannah would echo with Tambo's loud ah! The sound carried through the grasslands, startling birds and making zebras look up in confusion. Even the old lion Keto, who hadn't laughed in years, began to smile every time the cubs started giggling. The other cubs loved it too. They'd crowd around Tambo, waiting for their mother to say the word just to see him roll over in laughter again. It was like having a tiny comedian in the pride. One morning, Lila decided to take her cubs out for hunting practice. She crouched low in the grass, her golden fur blending perfectly with the dry stalks. "Now," she whispered, "we stay low, we stay silent." The cubs nodded seriously, trying to mimic her movements. Then she made her gentle signal call. Meh! Ha! Tambo's laugh shattered the silence like thunder. The herd of antelope that had been grazing nearby immediately bolted away in panic. Lila groaned, closing her eyes in defeat, while the other lionesses burst out laughing so hard they could barely stay crouched. "Tambo," she said between chuckles, "you just scared away our breakfast." But even she couldn't keep a straight face for long. He looked so proud of himself, his tiny chest puffed out as if he'd done something heroic. "They ran so fast, Mama," he squeaked joyfully. "That was amazing." And just like that, the tension broke. The pride had no meal that morning, but their laughter filled the air more than food ever could. Tambo became famous among the animals. The meerkats would peek out of their holes to watch the laughing lion cub, and even the hyenas, who were notorious for their own laughter, would imitate him just to join the fun. Sometimes, when the wind carried Lila's voice across the grasslands, meh! The echo that followed wasn't another lion, but the sound of Tambo's laugh bouncing back through the savannah like music. Days passed into weeks, and though his mischief never stopped, everyone adored him. His joy was infectious, his laughter, healing. But there came a time when laughter began to fade from the plains. The rain stopped coming, and the rivers shrank. The ground turned dry and cracked beneath the scorching sun. The herds moved away, searching for water, and food became scarce. The pride grew quieter each day. The cubs stopped playing so much, and even Tambo seemed confused by the heavy silence. One evening, as the sky glowed red and purple, Lila called her cubs close. "Stay near me tonight," she said softly. "We move at sunrise." "Meh," she murmured as usual. Tambo looked up, expecting to feel laughter bubbling inside him like always, but this time it didn't come. He saw his mother's tired eyes, her ribs showing faintly beneath her fur, and suddenly, the world didn't seem as funny. He walked closer instead, resting his little head on her paw. She smiled gently and licked his ear. "No giggles today?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "Not when you look sad, Mama." Her eyes softened. "Oh, my little sunshine," she whispered. "Even when the world is dry and hard, laughter makes it bloom again." He blinked up at her. "You mean if I laugh, the rain will come?" She smiled. "Maybe not the rain, but it brings something even better. Hope." For a moment, the two sat quietly under the fading light. Then, in the hush of dusk, she said again, "Meh." Tambo hesitated, then suddenly burst out laughing, loud and bright, his laughter bouncing off the empty plains like a forgotten song returning to life. Ha! The sound made his siblings stir, then laugh too, and before long, the whole pride was giggling. Even the weary old lion Quito lifted his head and chuckled deeply. The air, heavy for so many days, suddenly felt lighter. That night, the pride slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. And when morning came, something miraculous happened. A faint drizzle began to fall. The raindrops kissed the dry earth, turning dust into the smell of new life. Lila woke and blinked up at the sky, tears mixing with raindrops. She looked down at her cub. "You did it," she whispered. He yawned and blinked sleepily. "Did I make it rain?" "In a way," she said. "You reminded the world how to smile again." Tambo rolled onto his back and laughed joyfully as the raindrops tickled his fur. "Ha! It's cold!" The cubs danced around, the lionesses played like cubs themselves, and even the old lion rolled in the mud, his deep laugh mixing with theirs. From that day on, Tambo was no longer just the naughty cub. He became Tambo, the laughing lion, the pride's symbol of joy. Whenever times were hard, or when someone was sad or tired, all Lila had to do was say one simple word, meh. And somewhere, no matter how old he grew, Tambo would still laugh that same innocent laugh that could chase away any darkness. Years later, when he was no longer a cub but a strong young lion with a thick mane and a voice deep as thunder, his laughter still rang across the plains. One afternoon, while resting under the same old acacia tree, his mother looked at him with fond eyes and said softly, "Do you still find it funny, my boy?" He grinned. "Every single time, Mama." She chuckled, shaking her head. "You'll never change, will you?" "I hope not," he said, stretching. "If I stop laughing, who will remind everyone to live a little?" As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky orange and gold, the pride gathered close together, their golden coats glowing in the twilight. The wind swept through the grass, and for a brief, magical moment, it carried with it the faint sound of laughter, soft, pure, and everlasting. Some say that even now, when the sun sets and the lions call across the savannah, if you listen closely, you can still hear Tambo's voice in the distance, laughing with all his heart whenever a mother lion softly says, meh.